Well, now we're going to turn our attention to the details of how to complete notary services. When someone brings a document for notary services, that person may not realize that not all documents qualify for the notary services. For example, sometimes a client wants a notary to place a notary seal on a set of academic records or birth certificate just in order to make them look more official. Perhaps they'll be sending the document to a foreign country, and they'll have been given instructions to have, let's say, academic records notarized. Now, as you already know, the notary is not permitted to put a notary seal impression on any document, or anywhere for that matter, unless the document meets the criteria for a notary seal. In other words, the notary seal may not be used on documents that do not have proper notarial wording, either printed on the document or attached to the document. The notary may never use the notary seal or even the notary public title for any purpose other than for rendering notarial services. And doing either of these may cause the notary public's commission to be revoked or suspended, or if the notary is seeking a new application for, let's say, recommission, that notary application can be denied. Now let me clear up a very important point. We often talk about notarizing documents, but that's not really accurate. A notary doesn't notarize documents. A notary notarizes signatures on a document. The difference between the two is absolutely critical, and understanding this is essential in providing notary services for the public. In the previous example I just gave you, let's say a client brings an academic record or a birth certificate to a notary and wants these documents notarized. However, now you understand that since we don't notarize documents but signatures on documents, you should be able to easily see why you cannot simply place your notary seal on that type of document. The document must have a place for the signature of a person requesting the notarial services, and it must contain proper notarial wording. Academic records, birth certificates, vital records, and documents like these don't have either of these really important features. Of course, it really ought to be obvious that a notary may not notarize his or her own signature on a document. When somebody brings a document to a notary, the notary must first examine the document, and that's going to require that the entire document be present, not just the signature page. There are many documents that are multi-page, and the notary wording is usually on the back signature page, so often a client will only present the back signature page for the notary public to notarize. The notary must require that the entire document be present, or that notary has to decline that notary service. Look, notaries are never responsible for the accuracy of the contents in the document, unless, of course, the notary knows that the information in the document is false. It's the notary's duty to examine the document for blank or incomplete areas, but the notary is not required to read or understand the document's contents. Since this is true, a notary is permitted to notarize a document that's been written in a foreign language that the notary can't even read or understand. But the notary must still look through the entire document, and they're looking for areas that are obviously blank or incomplete. If there are areas that appear to be blank or incomplete, the notary needs to ask the document signer about those areas. This means that the notary and the document signer must be able to communicate in a common language. If the document signer cannot communicate with the notary, that notary must refuse to complete the notary service because California notary law prohibits the use of interpreters or translators. The signer must take the document to a notary who can communicate with them in a common language. Keep in mind, even if you, the notary, are able to communicate with the document signer, if the document is in a language that's other than English, the notary wording that will be completed by the notary as the part of the notary process must be in English. It's either on the document already pre-printed, or you may use a stamp to stamp the correct wording on the document, or you need to attach a page with the correct wording to the document. The notary is not permitted to complete the notary wording that's been translated into another language, even if the notary knows and can read that language. Alright, so once you've determined whether or not the document meets all of the qualifications to allow for the completion of the Notary Act, that is, that the document's not blank or incomplete, the document requires a signature to be notarized, and the document signer and the notary are able to communicate together in a common language, then the notary is going to need to determine what is the type of document being notarized. And if the notary can't determine that, then they'll at least need to enter in the journal that the document is written in a foreign language. Then the notary needs to determine that the document signer has a sufficient way to verify identity. The identity process must be completed before the notary seal can be imprinted onto the document. Always confirm identity before completing and signing notary wording.